So let's talk about fill layers and paint layers. So paint layers are kind of like a dumb layer. It's technically just called a layer, but I like to think of them as paint layers because when you paint on it, you get detail, and then that detail is, just kind of painted to the model. Now you can edit it to some degree, like you can always erase the paint layer. You can do different things like adjust the opacity. You can change the blending mode. But one of the fundamental problems with a paint layer is that any change to the model, so right now we're painting, let me go to brush, there we go. So right now we're painting all of these things in the model. Any change you add sticks. So like, let's say I change this to red, and then I paint on the model, and then I change this to blue, and then paint. When I do this, when I paint on this layer, I can't really edit these colors in a way that makes sense. So like if I wanted to make this all red or all blue, I can't just do that because the way that this layer works, it's kind of like a dumb layer where you can rapidly paint on it and it takes no setup to do, but there's no way to make serious edits to this or fine tune it that well. And it's usually not a good idea to work in layers like this. Now, I used to work in layers like this when I first started in Substance, and I definitely regret doing that. So like, let's say for example, we want to add like some height as well. So let's add some height. Let's like take away some height just for fun. So you kind of have, you have to manage a lot. Like that, there's a lot of problems with this. The first one is that it's hard to edit. The second one is that you have to manage a lot. So for example, if you start painting this blue that has height information, if I want to remove this height information, I have to select the eraser and then just get down to height, and then I can start erasing the height information. And that's fine to some degree, but you'd be much better off just doing a fill layer. So if I do a fill layer, you just set the fill. So like, let's say we want this to be red, and we don't need a normal. Let's say we want no metallic. We want the roughness to be lower, like 0.5, and then we want the height to go down. So we want to push it in. So let's do like minus 0.2. Okay, so now I just have this layer, right? It doesn't do anything yet. So if we right click on it and add a black mask, when I paint, it pushes down because it has a height, and it paints this red color. Now the upside of doing this is at any point in time, if I decide that I want this to be blue, I can make it blue. If I want this to stick up instead of down, I can now do that. So the upside of layers is that it's really easy just to copy and paste layers, and you can even right click on a layer. We actually have to make a folder first, but if you want to manually hand paint everything, but you want it to have you want the same colors across projects, one way to do it would be just to get this information down. I don't know why they don't have a hex. I don't know why they don't use hex codes, because it's so much easier just to keep track of hex codes instead of decimals. But what you can do is you can create a folder, right click on that folder, drop your thing in, and create a smart material. And then if you want to hand paint this blue on this, you're doing a series of models, you can do it that way. Whereas alternatively, remembering every single highlight and shadow color is going to be very unmanageable. So if, let's say for example, this is like shadow. So let's reduce the height. Let's make this like darker, and let's say we're just like painting in shadow. Now this isn't the best way to do this. There's different ways to do this, but this is just a rough example. So now we have like a pretty controllable thing, and you could use like a textured brush if you want. So I could go over to like brushes, and then get like a nice textured brush. Then let's get size, pressure, sensitivity, reduce the flow. The other thing that's nice about working with fill layers, let's say I hate this result, right click, clear mask, and then I can start over. So now I can start to paint in these shadows. And the other nice thing too, let's say I want to increase the intensity of the height. I can do that. Let's say I want to decrease the intensity of the height. I can do that as well. You can get extremely precise. So this is the big upside of this. You can, with a texture brush, with a fill layer, with a black mask, you can achieve the hand-painted results you want for most of the projects you're going to be working on. Of course, there's always smart materials and doing all the work in ZBrush, sculpting everything so that, like, you know, then the smart materials kind of carry this aspect of the texturing, and then you just fine-tune it. But this is really nice for getting control of your results and having consistency between projects, especially if you have some things that are going to be using the same material. So you can see I can just kind of paint in. Essentially all I'm doing is I'm painting on a mask, and it's just revealing the fill layer beneath. And upside of this is that you have complete control over every aspect. And if it, for whatever reason at any point you want to add some new channel, whether that be reflection, opacity, emissive, whatever, you can, and then you can also add that to the fill layer. So it's fully editable. You can even do something like, let's say I want to add a smart mask. So you can go to smart masks and drag and drop a smart mask in there at any point in time. All right, let's see what the result is. Okay, I think this one, probably not the best. Oh yeah, crumple's kind of weird. Let me get an actual, let me do like something more extreme, more noticeable. There we go. All right, so here's your like smart mask, right? And I believe you can still paint on it. Should be able to. Let me increase this. Okay, maybe not. But there is a way to do it so that you incorporate a smart mask, and then you can also still paint. You can always duplicate the layer, clear the smart mask, and then paint. So like, for example, just copy the layer, clear the smart mask, and then if you want to like if this result is close to what you want, you can start painting in. Let me reduce this again, the flow. You can like blend it better. So that way you kind of have both the results. And then we can go down to the mask and adjust it. Then we can go back to this and start blending it in. There's different ways to work with smart masks, but this is just an example. I didn't plan this particular thing, I just dragged a random one on. But you can see why this would be useful, because you can get like halfway there or like 80% there with a smart mask and then hand paint in the rest to refine it. And it's pretty useful to do something like this. And then, you know, just by duplicating, using fill layers, you can always right click and clear it if you don't like it. And then resume painting whatever it is you need. So like pretty rapidly we can get like shadows going for like some emphasis. But yeah, that's the difference between a normal layer and a fill layer. Fill layers with black masks are basically just superior in every way, because you can convert it to, like, another thing you can do. Let's say you're hand painting, like let's say you want to hand paint this. You don't want to use any smart materials. One thing you can do is you get all of your things set up. So let's delete this and let's just clear this mask. What you can do, copy all of your things. So like, let's say you can make your palette in here. So like, let's say this is your highlights. This is your midtones. And this is your shadows, and you want to hand paint this. And then we can change this. And you want this on all projects. So what you would do is you could do like pal for palette _ stone. And then you can right click on this folder, create a smart material. And then when you open a new project in your smart materials, so let's delete this now because it's a smart material. I can drag and drop this. And now I have the palette of everything that I want. So let's start working in shadows. And then for the midtone, I could actually just remove the mask. Just for now, like just remove the mask. So here's our midtone that we can start working in, or I'm sorry, shadows will be on top. So you could do it like this. Now the reason why this is nice is you have your palette now, so your base colors, right? And you can add colors to this, so that way you know exactly what colors you need if you want to get the like similar results, so that the colors are consistent across models. Let's say we had to paint like 10 different stonework assets, you know, like castles, bridges, turrets, walls, whatever. Now we can put in every single little thing that's used on one of them and use it on all of them. And you could also add notes too. So for like this, let's say we take notes on like what brush we're using. So let's go to like brushes. Let's say I want to use artistic heavy sponge. So you could even, for the highlight, you could put like 10% for like the flow or the opacity, whichever you prefer, heavy sponge. So that way, when you drag in the smart material, you have a reference. Okay, so all right, so I go to heavy sponge. So let's click on this. All right, I'm at heavy sponge, 10% flow, and or you can even put 10% F or 10% flow, whatever. You can make the name as long as you need to, but now you know, okay, this is how we're adding in, you know, highlights or shadows. So we're using like light flow. Now this is a kind of extreme. You'd probably want to reduce this or adjust the midtones, but these are kind of extreme, but you get the idea. So now there's a process within the smart material that you can then take and use across projects to get consistent results. Because one of the things that I definitely struggled with when I was first learning Substance, when I was painting like, you know, enemies for some game, and each enemy had like the same like types of armor materials. This is before I knew like about smart materials. I would literally take this, I would write down these numbers and copy and paste them. This is just so much nicer because now you have all of your layers, you have your highlights, your shadows, your midtones. You could add like, you know, whatever colors you need in here, and then you just paint it with masks. And if you just use the same types of brushes, you know what brushes you use, you don't have to like write all this in. It's just really on you to get the same consistent results. But the big upside of these masks and fill layers is that they can be edited easily and normal layers cannot. So that's the takeaway for this video. Now you can use normal layers, but it's usually not a good idea. And unless they change it in future versions of the software where they have more editability, you're probably better off just sticking with fill layers and black masks, because you can still get the hand painted effect. It's just now you have more control over what's actually happening to the model, or the texture rather. So yeah, that's it for this one. Definitely like and subscribe if you enjoyed this or found this useful. Drop a comment and let me know what you think. And also feel free to suggest videos or check out our TurboSquid store. The link is in the description. We make low poly game ready assets that also include the Unreal and Unity texture files. So yeah, that's it for this one. Thanks for checking this out, and I'll see you in the next one.